I think the central question is the technology better than existing technology? Can we move things more quickly, more efficiently from a cost basis, and can we move things more securely? And I think the answer to those questions are yes, and I think throughout history, any time that the technology is better, we typically adopt it, even if there's some resistance. So it just, the forces are such where these things will happen, whether Wall Street is fully embracing it or not.
Well, good morning, everyone. John, thank you for kicking us off. I have to say, this is absolutely hands down the best event of the year. This is such an amazing location, but I think most importantly, a really high-level group of people that are always people I want to talk to and bump into in the hallways. So we have a shortened time, it looks like, so why don't we dive right in? I think everyone knows Arjun Sethi. He is the co-CEO of Kraken and also the chair of Tribe Capital. And of course, Anthony Scaramucci, who needs no introduction. I want to touch on a couple
Is that good or bad?
That's a good thing, maybe. But why don't we start with you, Arjun? I mean, I think this is about the state of the digital assets industry. I think the one big catalyst has been the change in regulatory environment. Kraken had a heck of a time under the prior administration. You've settled with the SEC. You were sued by the SEC. How are things looking for you today between the Genius Act and the White House's plan and the Chair Atkins' speech? But talk about what that change has meant for Kraken as a company.
Yeah, I don't think it's relegated to just us. There's headwinds in the industry for a long time. Protocols, exchanges, everyone was trying to build on the crypto rails. So I don't think it was specific to us, but I don't think I'm saying anything new that people haven't said before. Is that it's a new administration, it's a focus on crypto technology, pro-innovation, pro-United States, as we've heard. And I think we're just looking forward to it, where the US is moving at a speed that can be much more akin to, like company or protocol level. And we can kind of course correct along the way, as opposed to what we've been seeing in other countries where they're kind of notching. And to their credit, outside the United States, they were ahead. And I think you're just seeing U.S. catching up and moving, and then just kind of like no pun intended, but like trumping ahead of the rest of the ecosystem.
Anthony, you always have stood at the center, at least in my mind, of the institutional world and the crypto world, and have been very involved in policy. And I remember last year we both attended a meeting in Washington with the Biden administration. They wouldn't let us into the White House, but they were kind enough to walk across the street and meet a group in a hotel. I know, right? It's like, look how far we've come.
Blindfolded too, right?
Yeah. We've come a long way, and I think even you've given credit. I know this isn't your favorite president, but have given credit to him.
He's everyone's favorite president, according to the president.
But how do you think Wall Street are perceiving these regulatory changes, and what does this mean for the TradFi world going forward?
I want to go back to that moment that Kristin's talking about. So we were in the Willard Hotel, in the conference room downstairs. Incidentally, the same conference room was used yesterday by the European leaders with President Zelensky. So they recognized the room right away, and the Biden people came, they took notes, and they basically said to all of us, listen, we hate you guys, but we would like your campaign donations. Okay, and they said, okay, thank you. Then they left. And then Kristin may remember we did a Zoom call with Treasury, and we said, listen, this Operation Choke Point 2.0 is wreaking havoc in the industry. They said, well, there's no such thing. And then somebody on the call said, okay, raise your hand if you've experienced some level of choke point 0 in your choke point 2.0. Everybody raised their hand, so it didn't go super well. And I would just say This is real plaudits to the Trump administration for getting it. And again, whatever your opinions are of President Trump, and I've been obviously opinionated related to him, he has phenomenal political instincts. And back in July of 2024, he realized that the future of financial services and the mantle of U.S. financial services leadership is going to include this industry, of course, include Kraken. And you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And I think we've had a major sea change. And I'll go out as far as saying that I think it's a permanent sea change. I don't see the Democrats, at least the ones below the age of 55, wanting to go back to a Elizabeth Warren anti-crypto army. There's just no anti-crypto voters out there. So I'm hopeful that this will continue and it will somehow permanentize in Washington.
One of the trends that people were talking about last night is, obviously this convergence of crypto and TradFi. And Arjun, you at Kraken have been looking outside of the traditional crypto world. You're starting to look at tokenization. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about these two worlds coming together and what the opportunities are?
Yeah, I think if you go back like 10 plus years, the whole promise of crypto was let's get as many people access to capital, access to money, not just trading and speculation. And so this sentiment has been talked about year after year after year. And I think for us, when we took a look at the exchange, global liquidity, kind of global demand for assets, we saw that with stablecoins over the last 5 years, which is how do you start thinking about actually putting in real world assets, real estate, tokenized stocks, et cetera. How could you do it in a way where it's not a walled garden? And I think one of the things that we've seen is that if you go back for any of the exchanges, and it's not to put any exchange on notice, but the value sets that a lot of these companies have, they're kind of a wrapper, and they are just trying to extract value and keep the customers within their ecosystem. And I think there's some value in that in the short term. But what ends up happening is that it goes away from what the core was of why a lot of us started over the last 10 years, either invested in it or started protocols from scratch, which is that decentralization also just meant freedom to be able to do what you want, to be able to own your own assets and not have someone come in and say, well, you're a part of my AUM, or I'm going to rehypothecate it, or traditional banking. And so we kind of went back to first principles. I kind of say this again and again, even to our team, is if you take a look at the Kraken culture doc and like what we're striving towards is that we build products and then we drive profits from them to drive it back into what we cared about in crypto. And so tokenized equities, or that layer for us, was really important so that you could have non-custodial or custodial wallets or exchanges all over the world, DeFi or not, that could perpetuate real-world assets and that global liquidity. So for us, it's like extremely important. And then on the convergence of the TradFi, it's more how do we bring those folks along the way to say, hey, like crypto's not nefarious. Yes, there was some speculation, but the word meme isn't a bad word. It's just more about like promoting this global liquidity that exists, not just in the United States, but all over the world.
Anthony, how do you think Wall Street's ready for tokenization? Do they see this as an opportunity? Do they see it as a threat? What are you hearing, and where are they at in the adoption cycle?
I would say some. I mean, obviously, Larry Fink is ready for tokenization. He sees the vision of it. I think that the traditional banks are probably going to take regulatory guidance from places like the Fed or the SEC before they move forward. But I think the central question is the technology better than existing technology? Can we move things more quickly, more efficiently from a cost basis, and can we move things more securely? And I think the answer to those questions are yes. And I think throughout history, any time that the technology is better, we typically adopt it, even if there's some resistance. Remember, everyone in this room has been in an Uber, but there wasn't one government official in any major city that wanted Uber to exist. So it just, the forces are such where these things will happen, whether Wall Street is fully embracing it or not.
I think to add to that, you see what I get worried about is the Wall Streetization of crypto, right? You see the DATs, you see all these corporate treasurers, you're seeing SPACs come back into play where they're going to just start investing more into the ecosystem. I think that's well-intended in some cases, but it's also it kind of reminds me of what we saw in 2020, 2021, where you just have a lot of fast money and sort of loose discipline around what's happening in the ecosystem because they're just excited about it. And you see these similar waves in like AI, et cetera. I think like the best thing to think about is like how do we get traditional Wall Street or institutions to adopt and start thinking about building into crypto rails rather than trying to control it in a financial way. Because I think that's when the industry gets better. And one thing that I think everyone kind of forgets about is the billions of people that are trying to transact with these assets today. Like XOX for us, I was surprised that it's been out for 4 to 5 weeks. I think we're like almost at like 3 billion in transactional volume. That just means there's a huge amount of demand outside the United States, and the United States prospers by just getting these types of products out there.
Yeah, no, I think as more and more products come online, and especially I think as it evolves to where people can hold their own assets and transact in DeFi, I think it's going to unlock a tremendous amount of
Well, even here in the United States, I want to be able to hold my stocks on my phone. Like I don't want anyone to control it, including Kraken, right? Part of it is we should be able to help proliferate that.
Chris, not to disrupt the flow, but I want to ask Arjun a question. Why Wyoming? Why did you guys choose Wyoming to be corporate headquarters?
So
help me out here, Arjun. I'm trying to boost this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so we're fans, and I'm still looking for a house, and I haven't been able to find one that I can afford. I think it started. So I mean, the real story is Jesse Powell, who's one of our co-founders, had done a sort of I don't know if it's a lunch and learn, but some sort of Q&A with Senator Lummis, and she kind of maybe got pilled into crypto at that moment, or there was a lot of people along the way. But I think her and the team have just been a champion of what crypto means, and I think to a certain extent this might seem corny, but I think if you take a look at like sort of the values that what the American values are, or sort of our first 10 amendments, and like what it means to be like part of the American dream, I think like they did a good job of taking what we had said, like why we wanted to build against this technology and rails and freedom and sovereignty. And I think they just have gone to bat more than any other supporter in the ecosystem across the House and the Senate. And so they were first and foremost. They talked about Bitcoin. They helped us with the SPDI here. So they've been champions. And so I think for us, we wanted to make sure that we could reinvest into the ecosystem, bring more people here. I think Trevor's sitting right here is on the CEO for SPDI as well. The point was that like where can we find states or folks that can be supportive, and we can do vice versa.
That's a great story.
I think we have time for one final question, maybe for you first, Anthony. You were very early with SkyBridge in helping provide institutional investors ways to get exposure to crypto in a format that they understood. I think we're starting to see potentially soon new ETFs under a generic listing standard, so we'll see more tokens be available in the ETF format. We're seeing the rapid proliferation of digital asset treasury companies. And we're also seeing a lot of companies either IPO or go public via SPAC, et cetera. What does this mean to you? I mean, to me, it seems like there's a huge demand that people want to invest in this space. But talk about sort of what you're hearing from your
Well, I would break it up into a few categories. I think there's a store of value category that I think relates specifically to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin emerging as not just an investment, but an asset class. And so if us in the industry are correct about this, Bitcoin will reach asset class level, meaning it'll trade to the rough market capitalization of gold. And everyone doesn't know exactly when that'll happen, but if you're a bull on Bitcoin, you think that's going to happen, and you've got a large group of people at a place like BlackRock selling that idea to big institutions. And I think the second category is related to utility and tokenization, and will these protocols be used to bypass the third-party transaction systems. If you just look at that system, there's approximately $7 trillion of third-party verifications that go on, credit card fees and et cetera. So I think if you look at those two separately, you say, wow, there's got to be huge demand for both.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different take. Is there's so many people here as well, and we're all working towards this ecosystem, is that Bitcoin is a protocol network, right? And I think a lot of people kind of forget that we're still building against that technology. There's a set of folks that are, they think of it as a store of value, and there's a set of folks that are still building on top of it, right? So there's this new meme generation that's happening on Bitcoin, but that also means that there's new types of technologies that can be built on top of it, then bridged against it, new sources of liquidity. I just think that we're so early in the ecosystem, what's going to happen across not just Bitcoin, but the rest of DeFi. It's really hard to fathom what's going to happen in 6 months to a year. It's more about like, how can we continue to race to support all that development that's out there? And so when people say like, oh, I think it'll be a store of value, I think they're thinking very zero sum, which is like, hey, gold is worth this much. Okay, well, like it could, we could be, 100x, 1,000x more than that in terms of like what the value of all these assets are going to be.
Final short answer question, Anthony. What are you most excited about for this conference? Who's your favorite guest that you might be seeing this week?
You're my favorite guest.
Well, okay, you're second.
Stipulate that right away. And then the thing I'm most excited about is people getting to meet each other and hopefully ending up doing some business together.
Arjun?
I came only to see Anthony.
You could have said I was your favorite guest, Arjun. I would have been very happy.
All right, well, I'm getting the red light, so thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
I'm really
guys.
excited about the content today.
Great job.